That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, be sure to drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Rich Simmerman, co-founder and CEO of Cantaloupe AI. Rich is shaking up the hospitality industry with an AI-powered hiring solution that cuts pre-screening time by nearly 100%. Rich started his entrepreneurial journey with a plant-based protein cereal company during COVID, scaled it to retail success, and now leads Cantaloupe AI to help hotels and restaurants hire faster and smarter with instant AI voice interviews. Rich, welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale.
Thank you, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
So to get started, you've had a fascinating journey from starting this cereal company in your college apartment to now leading Cantaloupe AI. So what sparked the idea to tackle hiring and hospitality with AI? How did you pitch that vision to skeptical hotel and restaurant owners who might be stuck on outdated systems?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Chris. There's not, at a glance, too much in common between creating a protein cereal and selling hospitality AI. But the journey is intertwined in the fact that when you're a 21-year-old CEO, and you're just getting your very first product out of the door. In this case, it was my plant protein cereal. There's not enough money to pay yourself for a while, so I continued my college hustle of managing a coffee shop. So I was a barista and then a hiring manager at a very high volume coffee shop. So I hired in hospitality for a while, and that experience brought me a lot of relationships with hiring managers, hotel people, restaurant people, coffee shop people, bar people. And that is where the initial concept came from. I loved that coffee shop story. A lot of the people that were regular customers were the children of people who had come in the 70s and 80s when it first opened. So it was a very generational, neighborly thing. I saw my regulars every day, and I really look forward to that. But I was pulled away from engaging with my customers and running the shop the way that it needed to be run because we had a constant drip of hiring. I spent about 25 to 30 hours a week in the small, rinkety office going through resumes. When we posted a job, we'd get hundreds of applications because that's what it's like now with Indeed, Quick Apply, and things like that. And I spent seemingly almost all my time on a constant hiring journey. And when I finally narrowed down 10 or 12 people from the 500 or 600 in the applicant tracking system, if they answered the phone and I finally got them in front of me, their resume told me absolutely nothing about them.
So you're living this, you're feeling the pain, right? You can understand the pain points. How do you then decide that AI is the way to go? How do you get into that? Do you have any tech background, or was this just purely a business decision and you found some tech people to fill out the rest of it?
Yeah, so while I was doing this, I was a political science student, so I had no business background, and my focus was in AI. So I was super interested in it. I was reading Amir Hussain and a lot of authors talking about the next generation of technology, and I was sort of obsessed with it, though I had no technical background. So I was obsessed with it for the purpose of how can I find tools that can liberate me from misery. That was kind of my thesis of AI. It's like people are complaining about AI replacing certain jobs, but wouldn't it be a net positive for humanity in some cases if really dangerous jobs were replicated? I think that's what the initial thought was. But then no, maybe not replacing was the next iteration of that. Maybe just liberating us from miserable tasks associated with certain jobs. And for me, that was going through resumes in an applicant tracking system, hunting down people to call and text and beg them to take the interview for the job that they applied for, get them in, and then make a judgment on a piece of paper. That obviously doesn't sound like a very modern practice, and it isn't. And I think I had this one initial obsession in my head, and that's because I was also in a political economics class at the time while I was this hiring manager, and then running this cereal company. A lot of different things happening at once. And I remember reading about how credit decisions were made when my parents were applying for credit in the 80s and 90s. You'd go into a bank and you write up an application for a credit card, let's say, and then you'd submit it with the banker, and then the special man would take it to the back, and then the special man would do all the calls and the things that the financier would have to do to determine the risk associated with giving you a line of credit. And then when it was all done and the games were over, they'd come back and tell you, yes, you're approved, and here are your terms, or no, you aren't. And I'm like, wow, this sounds a lot like what it's like to hire in hospitality. Someone comes in and they give you a piece of paper, and you've got to make these determinations based on gut feeling, and maybe you can make a couple phone calls to references, but then when it's said and done, I can give a good guess. But I'm like, but we don't do that anymore when applying for credit. I can go to Capital One's website and get pre-approved in 15 seconds. Why? Because there are super intelligent algorithms de-risking me on the back end. And it's taking hundreds of thousands of data points and basically saying, yes, give this guy credit, or no, don't get this guy credit. So all of those things thought initially, we have to be able to do this when it comes to hiring. Right? We've taken this process before and implemented it in other realms, but not here. But there's one problem with that. Hospitality people are not super open to AI, and they shouldn't be, to be completely honest with you. This is all about people in hospitality. It's all about grit and personality and soft skills. And there's a huge difference between service and hospitality, and AI has a really hard time capturing any of those things. So initially, we didn't know how we were going to replicate that de-risking process. I had just come off my first company, and I knew that I needed to start customer discovery, which is something that we're super adamant about. We don't build first, we learn first and then build from it. So I called the guy that I wanted to be my co-founder, someone that I've worked alongside with, and I knew his grit, I knew his passion, I knew his intelligence. And we started a 500-person customer interview journey for a year and a half. Hospitality people from San Francisco to New York, LA, Denver, everything in between, resorts in Mexico. And that's when we started to realize a couple of really important things. It's not just hotels, it's not just restaurants, it's hospitality, particularly high volume hospitality, even more so hotels, restaurants, groups that typically pay more and attract a higher clientele. When they hire someone and they make the wrong choice, or it takes too long to hire, it costs them a tremendous amount of money. Those pieces. Second pieces is that the first round interview is actually where the decision is made the vast majority of the time. I'll have hiring managers tell me, I know in the first 20 seconds of a conversation if that person's going to work out. Keyword, conversation. They don't know in the first 20 seconds of reading a resume. They know in the first 20 seconds of reading a conversation, because that's how it works in hospitality. We're conversationalists. We talk and we pick up on what one another bring. So I thought, okay, instead of applying in a form online, like you're applying for a credit card, what if applicants could apply through a conversation? Since that seems to be such a strong, powerful piece of determination. And that actually spurred the initial concept that is Cantaloupe today. We're the very first conversational hiring platform in hospitality.
So tell me a little bit more about that. How does that work? How does that conversation work? What does the employer put together in beforehand, and what does the employee have to do, and how does that facilitate that process?
So in June, we're launching the very first conversation-based applicant tracking system for hospitality. And that is the next extension of our product, and that's game changing for a ton of reasons. And I want to talk about how that works. Right now, we are a screener. So a customer will buy Cantaloupe AI and say, I want Cleo, who's our conversational agent, to screen my applicants. We'll have to attach Cleo to their applicant tracking system. And then as soon as a person applies, no matter where they apply, on Indeed or on their website, as soon as that information is captured by the applicant tracking system, the applicant gets an instant invite to interview. Hey, John, we got your application. You ready to get started on an interview? And the applicants usually are like, well, that was quick. And it's a whole lot better than ghosting, which is no one likes to feel that way. That's exciting. Things are going to change a bit in June, because over the past couple of months, our customers were very, very adamant that they didn't want it to stop there. Most hospitality people use generalist applicant tracking systems. One of our customers, who operates 9 restaurants, uses the exact same applicant tracking system as a Wall Street firm that one of my good friends applied for. It's like the what? There's nothing in common between those two. But that's the nature of the game. So we decided to build an applicant tracking system that directly serves hospitality and that directly prioritizes instant communication with the applicant. So what that looks like is in June, one of our hiring managers wants to create a job. Uh, Creating the description, an accurate description, a transparent description, and one that doesn't sound like ChatGPT is actually the hardest part. So we write it for you. And it's not ChatGPT, it's Cleo. So she's trained on a ton of hospitality specific data. The way we talk, front of house, back of house, heads and beds, cutting to the chase, the tone of hospitality. So I want to create a job for a sous chef at our fine dining restaurant. We already know that this is a premium type of restaurant. We know all about the business by the time you bought the product. Um, you can generate the job description. In that job description, we require our employers to list like a pretty accurate pay. So if it's with tips, you can estimate tips, things of that sort. Availabilities for the shifts, things of that sort. We call those vitals. So vitals are actually a huge part of predicting early turnover in hospitality. Is the pay aligned? Are they within close enough distance to where they can regularly get to work? And then that's assessed beyond just the conversation. We get that hashed out before we even meet the applicant, which is really cool. Then when that's done, the applicant will have a conversation with Cleo. So Cleo is an AI agent. And at first, you have to think about, do people in hospitality, are they comfortable with engaging with an AI agent? Is anyone really comfortable? So we had to make Cleo extremely human-like. She's not a human, but she had to be trained by humans and she has to be reviewed by humans. So she sounds pretty close to it. She has the ability to have a full-fledged conversation. She's not an audio recording device. She's a conversationalist. So she'll ask you about content and context. The most important thing about Cleo is she can assess hospitality, not just service. So a resume can only assess your service history, but Cleo can assess your personal history and your hospitality story, which is really important. So she'll be asking about your experiences, who you feel like you are as a person. Tell me more about that. Oh, that's so interesting. What about this? You said you worked at this position. What were you doing there? Like things like that. It's about a 5 to 8 minute conversation. She's never getting too personal, but she's getting just personal enough to get a really good feel for if this job is good for you and if the fit is good for the employer. When it's done, a couple really important things happen. So the applicant gets instant feedback. That's a really important part in this space. No one deserves to be ghosted. If you're going to put the time in to do this, you deserve something. And some of us aren't fantastic interviewers. Cleo can give you really precise, tailored feedback instantly and say, hey, you did this really well, but I wish you would have went into more detail on your service history. Or, you mentioned you worked here, but you didn't tell me what you did there. I'd love to hear that next time. Starting in a couple months, Cleo will instantly be able to recommend other jobs and the applicant tracking system to the applicant. So the moment they're done, it's not just a one-hit wonder, oh, I didn't get the job, whatever. She'll say, hey, but the restaurant you applied for or the restaurant group has four other jobs that you matched really well with. You want to keep the process going? So this is a talent retention aspect. On the employer end, whoever's hiring, let's say they're on a smoke break, a Diet Coke break, they've got 25 seconds. They can open up their phone or go onto their computer and see a list of pre-vetted, organized, most compatible to least compatible applicants for every role. Click it and see two things. They'll see the compatibility score, which is a combination of how good we think they're going to grow with the team, how happy the applicant will be there, things of that sort. And then one that's possibly the most advanced is the early turnover prediction. So just like those credit card algorithms are predicting whether or not you're going to pay back the debt, we're predicting whether or not you're going to quit in the first 90 days, which is a really integral thing in hospitality. The hiring manager can get transcripts. Soon they'll be able to listen to the interview, and then they'll get these really short to the point but very accurate summaries. Like this person's personality, they're a natural extrovert. They're going to handle customer service dilemmas really well. Or this person is so precise and focused, we know that they're going to be a great line cook. Things of that sort. They can make an instant hiring decision. It cuts time tremendously, but it actually cuts the first round, that miserable part of going through resumes and calling people, it cuts that by about 100%. And that's the biggest push.
Yeah, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So In terms of building this tech, obviously the technology out there has been advancing very rapidly. When did you start the development process, and how often are you having to make, or having the opportunity to even make additions and add new things that you didn't even really plan on because of what's becoming available?
It's a great question. I think when we had the first idea for Cantaloupe and Cleo, our agent, it was not technically possible to do what we're doing today. I think we were close, uh, but the ability for an agent that just studied up, years of hiring history for your exact organization, to have a full-fledged, engaging conversation with a person, and then immediately give precise feedback, we weren't quite there yet. So we've actually watched the like technological capabilities sort of unfold before our eyes. And my CTO and co-founder Josh and our back-end machine learning engineer Robert have been like absolute pioneers for this. I learn something new from them every couple of days. It's actually overwhelming oftentimes because I just don't understand sometimes like what this development is. Like, oh, okay, we're actually able to do this. Are you sure? It's kind of really shocking the rate of change. But those guys are so in love with the customer we serve. They're so adamant about hospitality. Like we all came from hospitality backgrounds. That back end engineer, Robert, he was the bartender. He knew what it was like. We all have this like, oh, we're not going to use AI to get someone else another nice $150,000 job on Wall Street. Someone else is already doing that. We're going to use AI to help the person down the street that really, really needs to keep the bills paid find a job that they're going to love, doing something really, really powerful, which is bringing a great experience to others. This is a service economy, and AI hasn't been innovated for as much here. You don't see Y Combinator putting out a ton of hospitality tech companies. I couldn't even name one. I'm sure they exist, but the fact that we get to do this, it's motivating every day. It's like we have a core customer that we love, and we were all here at some point. On the technological end, the ability to have this conversational agent screen that isn't just ChatGPT, it's something much more powerful is ridiculous. We can detect emotion. There's emotional layered detection in this conversation. We're able to detect in the way that I'm speaking right now, my ability to be an extrovert versus an introvert and make really good predictions in those conversations. That's what we say when our technology looks for content and context, which is just super exciting to me.
Awesome. No, that's really fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about the customer side right now. So you mentioned that they're using a lot of antiquated systems to do their hiring processes right now, but hospitality is notoriously slow to adopt new technologies. So how do you get over that hump, and how are those potential clients reacting to this kind of disruption in their daily processes?
It's a fantastic question. We get asked that all the time. It's like, are these people really ready for this? Are they wanting this? And I think it's a very, very similar analogy to absolutely hate needles. I hate them. They're painful. I am still fearful of them at 25 years old. But if I'm sick enough or I am worried enough about the potential to catch a disease or anything of that sort, I'm gonna take the needle. If I know that this is going to help me tremendously. And this all leads back to I think a lesson that we live by as a team. Create a painkiller, not a vitamin. This isn't an injection of a vitamin to our customers. This is like a painkiller to the industry. There is not a single human, for the most part, that I've ever spoken with in this space that has told me they have not struggled to find and keep great talent, even if they're paying tremendously well and they're a fantastic company to work for. And we think that a lot of our teams reflect that. It's just the nature of the space. It is constantly moving, and there's a constant need to fill roles. So a few things here. Our ICP, our ideal customer profile, the decision maker is oftentimes an individual that's very seasoned in hospitality hiring. They're probably somewhere between their 50s and 60s, not all, but a lot of the time. And they have a lot of hiring wisdom. So they know what to look for in people. And they do a really, really good job of it. But they can't scale themselves to the point where they speak with everyone. And I also will hear from that exact type of customer, it's getting harder to find good talent. It's getting harder to harder. I don't know if it's because Gen Z doesn't want to work, or I don't know if it's because it's just harder to find people with the tools we're using. Those are all reasons that lead people to try Cantaloupe. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we had this wrong at first. We thought we could come in and be a fancy Silicon Valley AI company and be like, oh, look at this advanced AI. Look at these features. Let's sell you features, people. Like, oh, isn't that cool? Don't you want that? That's great. Like, you know, no. we have to sell people a solution and one that they absolutely relate to. Cantaloupe AI is in our name, but we don't use the word AI in customer conversations unless we really, really get down to specifics. It's never a selling point. Like, let AI help you hire. What hiring manager at a restaurant is going to be really actively thinking about that at night? Very few. That's not the way of doing it. But a few macro things in the industry are starting to help us. So this year, a hotel and restaurant report showed that 56% of hiring managers in hospitality are looking to use more AI tools. Uh, Really exciting. What they're often using is a pretty generic version of AI because that's what a lot of applicant tracking systems are giving them. A magic job creation description. We talked about that earlier. That's not a selling point for us. It
Mhm.
works well, but that's not a selling point. That's a selling point for a lot of billion-dollar applicant tracking systems talking about rolling out AI. I know that because I'm in the applicant tracking systems of our customers. Like, this is not advanced. This is just ChatGPT, which is cool, but it's not really nothing fantastic. Customers like to feel that it's something so precise to them, especially in this space, that oh, it's like I wrote that. Wow, that's scary. That's really good. Um, that helps a lot. But most importantly, it's the results. There's no other case. Everyone's going to be naturally skeptical. They should be. I would encourage them to be. Everyone's going to be naturally offering pushback. Oh, I don't think it can do this. I'm not so sure about this. I don't know if AI is for us. We've been hiring here for 51 years. I love it when customers say that because that shows their conviction. It shows that they're adamant about hiring the right people. And I tell them, we are not going to replace you. We are not going to replace the human interaction. Let me extend how good you are across all of your applicants. And that's usually what happens. If they're like, I can't believe this. I can't believe it actually is able to have this type of conversation and give me these types of results. That's how we help people understand that hospitality, AI is not replacing them in hospitality. Goes back to that what I said earlier. It's just actually eliminating us from some of the miserable tasks and also giving us insight we've never had before.
So what are some of the hurdles that you're seeing when it comes to these conversations with customers and in relation specifically to AI? Is it more that they're skeptical that it'll work? Is it more that they've seen other versions that you mentioned that are so vanilla and just not and generic, they don't really do anything that beneficial for them? Or is it that concern that AI is going to impact their job?
The number one concern that I've heard it over and over and over again, might shock you. And it shocked me, but it also reinforces the quality of people that keep hospitality up and running on a daily basis. The number one concern is bias. We've heard that religiously.
Hmm.
Oh, this AI tool, I hear about AI and bias, or what about its ability to potentially discriminate on an applicant? Those are all things we hear religiously, so much so that it's become a major selling point for us, is bias reduction. So machines are inherently biased. They're trained by people that are biased. We all are in some ways, and that's something that we have to acknowledge first. Saying, "Oh, this is 100% bias free." Anyone that develops technology that tells you that, their heart's probably in the right place, but they just can't say that accurately.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the first thing. The second thing is to take active and proactive steps towards reducing some of that bias. And some of the things that we do is, for example, Cleo, starting in June, won't be able to read your name as an applicant. So the hiring manager will see your name, but your name will not be a part of that algorithmic decision because inherently we have name bias. That's something that's becoming more and more common in research. The second thing, and this is perhaps the greatest piece of it all, is tone, language, slang, cultural tongue. So we want people to speak naturally. We don't want them to get on and polished up and pretend to be someone they aren't because they're not going to be able to sustain that 5 days a week at work. Um, it is really, really important that Cleo is able to let them speak their natural language the way that they'd speak it. In New Orleans, we have our own language. Like we talk about making groceries. We don't say we're going to the grocery store, we're making groceries. That is something that I think a lot of systems would be like, what? Oh, maybe their grammar. That's a New Orleans thing. We're not going to deduct applicants for speaking culturally. That's a really important part. For Cleo, she's able to accept a lot of different languages and a lot of different tones. That's really important. Last but not least, compliance is the bare minimal. But it's also really important. So even at our earliest stage, we've gone above and beyond compliance. So we're not just equal opportunity compliant and ADA compliant. That's all fine. We are working to be California Consumer Privacy Act compliant and be on the front end of like AI compliance. So restricting what AI can and can't do, and also making sure that we don't make decisions. We tell all of our hiring managers that you have to make the final decision. We can give you supplementary data, but you should always follow up with these applicants and meet them in person or on a virtual meeting. Those are all small steps, but really prioritizing a person's ability, soft skills, and personality, that's what matters for us. And it's really important that that shines through. So machines can be biased, and algorithms can potentially, exclude certain groups. And I'd say we do just about everything we can at this stage to try and erase that.
Okay, that's very very interesting. Very interesting. So this next question has kind of two prongs. We've talked about all the positives, where things are going, how well things are going, all that. Let's talk about your challenges. So first, what is the number one technology challenge that you guys are facing right now in getting this product out there? And second, what is the number one business challenge that you're facing in terms of reaching market and starting to really grow?
Yeah, the technology challenge is transitioning in between products. We have been a screener, a pre-screening technology that is a layered software. So we attach to the applicant tracking system and then work in tandem with it. Transitioning from we attach to we totally replace the applicant tracking system is really interesting. I will be completely honest with you. My team has never built an applicant tracking system before. We've surrounded ourselves with people that have, and with industry insiders that have helped tremendously. But this is a new task. And I think that's a great thing because nearly all applicant tracking systems that are deployed now look the exact same. They're reskins of 1996 technology, even the billion-dollar ones. It's the difference between like what's under the hood of a new Ford truck and a new Tesla. We're not saying one is better than the other. We're just saying it's a totally different thing under the hood. And that's the approach we've taken. But that's actually been a challenge. Of course it has been. Stitching together conversational agentic abilities with instant messaging, instant applicant scheduling, these are all difficult. Integrating is a really challenging task. A lot of people just take that for granted. But when you've got to integrate into, platforms like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, and then integrate into every HRIS system, which is the system we go into after we've been hired, and it's time to get set up for payroll. All of those things are timely, and they have to be stitched together remarkably well in a super easy, simplistic dashboard. So that's really hard to do, and our dev team is killing it, but it's tough. On the business end, I think we have a ton of challenges, especially when we just opened our first round and we've started to raise, which is exciting, but you learn a lot. And I think the first thing is that investors are naturally becoming a bit more skeptical of vertical SaaS. I've noticed that a lot, especially when we get to investors that may not be as big on AI, but maybe generalist SaaS. So I've heard this a few times where it's like, oh, great, awesome. ChatGPT is just going to wipe this out in 3 years. Um, I respect their opinion, but I disagree with it 2000%. We're not ChatGPT. We're our own system and our own model, and the customers understand that. But proving that on a business end when you're raising is really challenging. The second end is pricing. It's a really interesting space. You said it perfectly earlier. Hospitality is really behind. We're usually 1 to 2 generations behind. So the SaaS model isn't the prevalent model in billing and hospitality. You've got a lot of VCs and stuff saying, "Oh, SaaS is dying," and meanwhile, we did a lot of willingness to pay discovery customers. Their number one wish was, "Oh, if we had a regular monthly predictable bill, that would be huge if it wasn't a la carte." So we rolled out this SaaS model that our customers love, and some VCs are like, "Oh, SaaS is dead. It needs to be cost per applicant or things of this sort." And look, we get it. Everyone has a good opinion, especially in this space, because a lot of people have seen a lot of things, but we are having a tough time as a hospitality SaaS deployer of AI and developer of AI. It's a really, really challenging thing because other spaces that have developed AI and SaaS are being pulled in this direction, and we're being pulled in this direction. I think it shows that we're selling to a very different customer in a very different segment. And unless the VC has backed hospitality software in recent years, they may not be as understanding of some of those situations.
And what about client outreach? How are you getting into these conversations with customers? How open are they to having a conversation with a technology company when they're still trying to just keep their head above water, keep making sure that they do their daily tasks? How has that gone?
It's a really good question. We are also at a fork. So there's one half of this is our team, born and raised in Southeast Louisiana, New Orleans. One in four people work in hospitality. We love people, probably more than most founders in most cities. When I'm in San Francisco or New York, I have to remember like, oh, I can't go up and like start chit-chatting everyone. They're probably trying to get their work done. Being super personal and making a lot of connections and friends is very powerful in this space. So referrals is actually our most important means of customer acquisition right now. If we really, really satisfy one of our pilot partners, then there's a very high likelihood that they're going to tell one of their friends in the industry about us. There's even more of a likelihood if we incentivize them. So we're building a really, really powerful incentivized program right now, incentive referral program, to where our pilot customer can actually get a year free if they refer us to a certain number of paying customers. It's a really, really big thing in the space. And it trickles pretty quickly. So there's this human approach. The vast majority of decisions are made based on referrals and hospitality. Again, we're people centric. But then there's this AI approach. We are a hospitality company first, but we have a lot of AI happening in the background. Agents are changing the game. We use Apollo. Apollo is remarkable. Apollo is so good at helping us identify the exact. We know an ICP, or at least we think we do at this stage. Apollo is so good at helping us say, this is exactly who we need to be talking to at this exact organization in this exact city, because we already know they're suffering from this problem. That's really, really helpful. When we get in the door, the first conversation is never a sale. That might annoy investors or some business people and say, oh, these guys aren't as focused. It just can't be that way in hospitality. I cannot sit down with someone, even virtually, and start with them like, oh, we're developing this AI. No, 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 no. It's always an interview. We've said that our customer conversations are like therapy because after 10 minutes with these people, we start hearing the no calls, the no shows, the costs are bad hire. I can't keep up with it, this and that. And we're just kind of like, oh man, I totally get it. I've been there. Here's my experience. Hey, if we had something, it sounds like you're dealing with this, it sounds like you're doing that. If we had something that I think could totally change the game for you, would you be open to me showing it to you either now or later? And it's usually always, you know what? Yeah, if it could do that, yeah. That's a really different thing. This is it's a slower sales cycle in hospitality, but like a good like pot roast, it definitely comes out better in the end, and that's super important in our space.
Believe it or not, as a marketer in the tech space, like that's not just limited to hospitality. And I think because of all these AI systems that are out there and how easy it is to just have ChatGPT or whatever create an email and send it off in mass, that first conversation for almost any industry when you're trying to get in the door and have those conversations with leaders and get contracts and build out your business, it can't just be a direct sale anymore. Unless you've got a giant brand name on your wall, you need to be starting with a relationship. And that's where these conversations come in. And authenticity, I've always talked about, is becoming more and more and more important as we move into this AI era, because you're losing that human touch in so many ways that being in person, having those conversations is critical to starting those relationships and then leading into the business relationship, right?
You put it perfectly. I think that was very insightful and a very, very good way of looking at how we interact with customers in the age of AI. I think it's perfect. If I could have an in-person customer meeting with every customer, I would do it because I know it's meaningful and I'm learning more in a lot of ways. But that's just not possible. So we have to find a really good balance between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. So how big is your team right now?
We have a full-time team of five and a sixth part-timer. And I think that's really, really different than what you're reading about on LinkedIn with one or two person founded companies that are going to be billion-dollar companies in the age of AI. I don't doubt it, but that's not how we are. We build our own technology in-house. We're building for a very different space, and it requires a lot of different moving parts. So we are a bigger team for our stage. And that worries me sometimes as a CEO because I think of, costs. But it has paid off tremendously. And we've been able to hit above our weight because of that team.
Yeah, definitely seems like that would allow you to move quickly while also maintaining that relationship side of things. Because if you have a two-person team, you're going to be heads down in the technology, in the building the product. You're not going to be able to be out there also having those conversations.
You're exactly right. There's literally a human for every single one of our customers. So every single one of our customers has had FaceTime with me or one of my co-founders and gets it regularly. Obviously, we're early stage, so you have to do that, but like that's not going to stop for a very long time.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So you're in the Techstars accelerator right now. You're trying to raise capital. What is that like in the era of AI? Like you've talked about it a little bit, but expand a little more on what are people expecting versus what is actually possible, and how do you balance doing the accelerator thing with also trying to run and build the business at the same time?
It's a great question. Techstars workforce development was a lifesaver for us. Some people say accelerators aren't great for them or a founder only needs it if they can't do it. Again, I get really tired of hearing people on LinkedIn write some type of inspiring post and make it seem like it's that case for everyone, if you can't tell. That wasn't the case for us. It might be for some, but it wasn't. New Orleans is one of the best cities in the world, man, but it's just not for pre-seed AI startups. We needed help. We knew that we were building something really special, and we knew that we were super passionate about our customers, but we needed exposure, and we also needed people who had had experience building applicant tracking systems before and coaching early stage founders. And we got that, and we got really lucky because our managing director at this program went to college in New Orleans. He knew New Orleans like the back of his hand, and I think that meant a lot to us because where we come from is super important, and it's helped him understand us and us understand him. Fundraising, a lot of people think they're ready for it, myself included, a while ago, and you're not. We just aren't. Um, you can even if you have a safe and term set and things of that sort, it doesn't necessarily mean you're ready. And that's a lesson I've learned recently is that you've got to be emotionally ready, and you've also got to be ready for due diligence. You've got to have OKRs and KPIs, and you've got to have a pro forma financial that is, yes, an assumption, and probably wrong, but showing that you're thinking clearly and thoroughly about the future, down to how much you're going to spend in what area of sales. Those are all things that I had to learn really, really hard sometimes when I'd have a meeting with an investor, and they were very kind, not all of them actually, but most of them. And then they'd be like, look, you guys are just too early. What does that mean? I had to understand that. And that's really, really hard. And the biggest lesson I've learned in the last 7 months, because I had my serial company, and I didn't know it then, ironically, but I know it now, is that there is a cataclysmic difference between a pre-seed company and a seed company. And no one ever talks about that. And a lot of investors say they are early stage. What does that mean? So the first question is, do you invest in pre-seed companies? And if so, when's the last time you've invested in one? It's not mean. It's not aggressive. It's just determining whether or not we're going to waste each other's time right now.
Right.
And a lot of them will say, yes, I invest in pre-seed companies. We have been first checks before. Okay, good. I'm at ease now. I now know that I'm not going to waste my time at least pitching myself to them. A lot of seed funds, it's different. We're not there yet. We've got to have a lot more MRR or traction, and that's challenging. There have been the case recently where some venture funds have reached out to us, which has been really exciting, big ones. And they're like, look, we know you guys are early, but we're really interested in voice technology, and we love that you have this very specific customer, and we heard about you guys from this. And then I usually respond with, oh, great, we love it. Just so you know, we have this many customers and a paid pilot, this much revenue. We are still very early. Would you like to keep the conversation going? Just hashing that out saves me a ton of time, and it saves them a ton of time. The next thing is you get investors don't respond to cold emails. They don't. And they probably shouldn't. Like I get it. You have to get out there somehow. And I still send them. I send them every single day. I'm not going to stop sending them because there's a chance that one does. But investors respond to warm intros. So Techstars gave us the opportunity and gives us the opportunity to get a whole lot more warm intros. And since we joined, we've had a whole lot more meetings, a whole lot more due diligence, and a whole lot more movement and momentum. That's important. So finding people that we are connected to. Last but not least is, what do they invest in? A lot of people will just see a fund or an investor and just hit them up and say, here's my deck and this and that and that and this. Go and look at their portfolio, like actively. Have they invested in a company that looks like mine? Is there a real vertical here? When did they invest in that company? And saying like, oh, I saw that you guys invested in Pymetrics. Pymetrics is a company that inspired us a lot early on in screening. I'd like to show you how we do something super different. But I think you might be interested. That adds to it a lot. And then, I want to add on one more thing. I think this part is like therapy because it's existential. Where are they located? I don't want to live in San Francisco. Beautiful city, really cool people. Went to college not far from there for a while. It makes my stomach sick thinking about having to leave the cities that I love and living there. But I think there may be people that are onto something. I hate to say it, but the data is there. The vast majority of pre-seed funding comes out of San Francisco and New York. It just does. There's some in Denver, there's some in Austin, but there's most in San Francisco and New York. And that's something we're having to existentially answer right now as a company is, are we willing to go and park it there for a few months to raise? And I think the answer is yes. It's a hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, I actually took a company myself through an accelerator program a few years back. And one thing that definitely was always something to look out for is that every one of these people you speak to, whether they're an investor or an advisor, everyone's going to have an opinion on what you should do with your business. You don't have to listen to everyone. And that's not a knock on those advisors or those investors. They know their lane, but they may not know your lane, and they may not know where you're going with your company. And you have to balance that out and still be confident enough in what you're doing with your own company to say, no, I think we're on the right path.
So, Chris, did you get a lot of different competing advice when you were in your accelerator?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I get it, man. You just hit the nail right on. A lot of opinions, a lot of really good opinions, but the founder's opinion and the founding team, it's up to you at the end of the day. It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been great. Before we wrap, let's do one last thing. What one piece of advice would you give to a founder or a dev shop, someone who's listening right now that's working in AI, working with technology? What is your piece of advice for what they should do to be successful in this current environment?
Do not create a wrapper around ChatGPT. Or Claude or Llama or another massive LLM. They are such great tools and they are changing humanity in a lot of ways. And they can even help be a part of your tech stack. But if they are your product, you're not going to be around for a long time. I don't believe it. And you're not going to serve someone super well. You might serve someone okay, pretty good, but you won't serve them exceptionally. So consider building your own solution if you can. And I think you can.
Fantastic. Again, thanks so much for dropping all this insight. This was really good, really interesting conversation. Definitely love what you're working on. Happy to help support you guys by putting this content out there for you. Rich, thanks again for joining us. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. You can find us at trycantaloupe.com. If you know anyone that's hiring and wants to try a free version of Cantaloupe and screen those applicants instantly, it's yours. And you can find us on socials at Cantaloupe AI or Try Cantaloupe.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks again. And thanks to everyone for listening. Please be sure to subscribe and leave a review and just keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.